Hello and welcome back to the channel, and any new viewers, hello to you. This is chapter 3, 29 to 52. I've been having some problems with my phone memory, so I haven't been able to film anything. I'm trying this one on my tablet. Hopefully it will come through okay. When I looked at this period, it's 20 odd years, so I think if I talk about my life in London for 20 years, it'd probably be about 2.5 hours long. So I think what I'll do, I'll cut it in half, and I'll do chapter 3 part 1 and chapter 3 part 2. So we'll start with the first 10 years of when I've moved to London. So 29 years old, I moved to London. I've got a bed sit now in Tooting. No job. It took me about 2 weeks to find a job. Initially, when I moved to London, I was expecting it's going to be, paved with gold, and I'm going to get a job in the city with all the yuppies. And when I started looking into it, I soon realised that I didn't have enough qualifications. I'd never been to university or college, and wasn't old boys network sort of type of thing. So that was a no-go. I did apply for a couple of jobs, but never even heard anything from them. So I had to fall back onto what I'd done previously in the catering industry in Blackpool. And the first job I got was a kitchen porter in a hotel. Bottom of the food chain, if you like, the kitchen porters. It was only a 2-star hotel, but there seemed to be a class system there, that everybody, different levels. You couldn't talk to the other people. They looked down on you. I mean, I don't know if it was because I wasn't from London or I wasn't foreign. As a northerner, I mean, I worked hard, but I find it quite difficult to talk to the other staff. As I say, they were like looking down on you. Didn't really like the job, but it enabled me to rent, and live. So I did that for 2 months. Didn't really like it. So I decided to look around for other jobs while I was working, and I found a job washing pots and pans in a pub called Pig in the Pound, and it was on Oxford Street in London. And it was quite a strange place because they actually went down underground to the pub. So I started working there in the kitchen. The chef was well pleased with me because, as a northerner, hard work. He'd never seen it as clean. I think I was there for about 2 months, and it got quite busy behind the bar, and there was a bit short staff. So I asked if they wanted a hand, so I started working behind the bar as well. So I'd be in the kitchen when they were doing the food, and then when that finished, I was helping behind the bar. And I met an Australian guy behind the bar, and he suggested to me that the best way to get work is to join one of the agencies. Now I'd heard of the agencies that, they get paid X amount and then pay you, so that's how they make their money. So I took his advice and joined an agency, and I was soon getting waiting jobs. It came about my silver service experience wasn't very good. I wasn't really cut out for the London scene as a waiter, really. I don't think, in hotels and things. I had a job as a room service waiter at one point as well. That's guests weren't very nice, really, so I decided to just try and concentrate on bar jobs. I was still working in Pig in the Pound, and I was getting other jobs. So like that was my day job, and then I'd get a nighttime job, so working in different pubs. I did this for about a year. The only problem I didn't really earn enough money to travel back to Blackpool and see my daughter, um, which was one of the main reasons for moving to London, to have some money. So after about a year, I got a job through the agency, um, at a place called the Players Theatre, which was under the Archers in Charing Cross. It was a private members club, but it was the theatre. It was a bit of a strange setup. And what it was is, back in the 70s and 80s, there was a program on TV called The Good Old Days, and it was old time musical. And the Players Theatre is just basically what they did in the Players Theatre. They put on old time musicals. Excuse me. And it was the club was set up with a restaurant and a little bar and the theatre. So guests, the members would come in, bring guests, have a meal, then go in and see the show. Once the show finished, have a few drinks in the bar. It's a nice place to work. But I was only agency in it. But they liked what I was doing behind the bar. And one of the bar staff left and they offered me a full-time point. So it was an evening job. So from 5 o'clock till like 12 o'clock at night. So I could still work in the Pig in the Pound, and then I'd go to the Players Theatre and work the night shift. But after a while, it was getting a bit too much doing both, and I wanted to enjoy a bit of London. So I gave up the job in the pub and stayed at the Players Theatre. That meant that during the day I could play the tourist and go and visit different places in London, like Tower Bridge, Buckinghamshire Stars, Buckingham Palace, all the little places which people go to. So I could try and find my way around a little bit more and enjoy a bit of London. So I was working in the bar in the Players Theatre for a while, and they were a bit short-staffed in the restaurant. And I told them I'd done waiting before, and I helped out as a waiter. And because the restaurant was open from 5 till about 7 o'clock, and then the show started, and then the bar was after, I could do both. So from 5 o'clock I was in the restaurant area waiting on tables. Once the service had finished, then I'd go behind the bar for the rest of the evening. The tips were quite good, both in the restaurant and behind the bar. And you got to know all the regulars, because with it being a members club, they came in quite often. So I did this for about 6-7 months, and the head waiter left. And I thought, I'll apply for that job. So I applied for the head waiter's job, and they gave it to me. So I was the head waiter then. And gave me a bit more money, and I managed to travel back to Blackpool a couple of times on my days, a couple of days off, to see my daughter. About 6 months later, they brought in a new manager, and this person became one of my best friends, a bit of a soulmate if you like. His name was John Luke, and he was French, and we got on really well. And about 6 months later, I was still living in Tooting, and John Luke lived in a big Victorian 5-bedroom house near Clapham Common. Um, John Luke and two of the guys had been buying the house, and they rented out two of the other rooms uh, to help pay the mortgage. And one of the guys was moving out, and John Luke offered me the room. So Tooting was a bit far out. Clapham Common, a lovely area, nice Victorian house. They had a cleaner who came in, did all the washing, ironing, cleaning. So I moved into the house with John Luke. I was there for about 8 months, I think. And unfortunately, one of the guys wanted to sell and move to back to Scotland because he was Scottish, and he wanted to move back to Scotland. So they had to look at trying buying him out, and it became apparent that they couldn't raise the funds to do that because the property prices had gone up quite high by then. So they decided to sell, and myself and John Luke, I wasn't earning enough to buy into a mortgage, but I could pay rent. So once the house was sold, we moved to a new flat in Streatham together. Nice area, lots of trees and everything. No tube, but trains to into London. About 6 months later, John Luke was offered a job working in banqueting house. He'd previously worked in gentlemen's clubs, and he got to know a lot of people. He introduced me to quite a few. He introduced me to wine. I'd never really thought about drinking wine before, and it was an interesting time. Well, when he left, I applied for the manager's job, and the directors at the club, at the Players Theatre, luckily gave me the job. So I became the manager of the club. It was a bit of a step up, more money, more responsibility. But I also wanted to push it a little bit. Because it was a members club and it was open quite late, till 12, a lot of people, theatre people who finished work, used to come. We called them green room members, and it was like they couldn't come and see the shows and stuff, but they could come in after for a drink. So I tried to build that up, and I met a lot of people in the West End. Some of the people were in the shows, quite a lot of people behind the scenes in the shows. I think that was the first time I ever met Lily Savage, or Paul O'Grady, because he used to come in quite often. Because where he was doing his drag show in the tavern wasn't that far away, really. It was a great opportunity to network a little bit with people. I think I must have seen most of the West End shows at that time for no cost. I might get invited by the spotlight operator and go and see Les Mis, sit next to him in the lights and see the show. See the show from backstage. The sound engineer a couple of times. So yeah, got to see a lot of free shows, really good shows. Les Miserables was probably the best show I saw there. a really powerful show. As you probably know, it's world famous and fantastic music. This went on for, well, I was working there. I used to wear tails and fancy waistcoats. You know, not like top hat tails. I didn't go that far with the top hat, but it was in keeping with the theatre, um, which was quite good. Because all the costumes and things used to get washed by the costume mistress, so my cleaning shirts and things like that was done for me, which was great. It was unfortunate that I think about 18 months, nearly 2 years, I was managing, um, but the club was starting to suffer, losing members. Members were getting older and dying off, and new members weren't really interested in joining. Old Town Musical, not everybody's taste. And the directors decided that they couldn't justify paying my wages, really, at that stage. They were going to manage it themselves to save money. So reluctantly, I had to leave. I really did enjoy working there. It was a fantastic place. So another time when I'm out of work. But now I've settled into London, know my way around a bit more. I've had quite a bit of experience, managerial experience. Um, but I didn't really want to carry on doing that, nights and long hours and things like that. So I tried looking for different jobs. And a real departure from all that, I ended up being a bailiff. I got a job with a company in Clapham as a levy bailiff. I'll just explain, a levy bailiff doesn't actually go and take your stuff off away. I was like the first person who'd turn up and say, you owe this money, and I'd make a list of all the individual items in a property which could be taken and sold to pay a debt, and then enter into a payment agreement with the person who was in debt. The great thing with this job is that I got a van, which I could drive when I wasn't working, so I had it all the time. And the job was Monday to Friday, so this meant that I could pop up to Blackpool on the weekends and see my daughter. So I didn't really like the job, but I stayed for 18 months. And the main reason was the van. It gave me mobility. And the company I worked for had contracts with councils all over southern England, down to Isle of Wight. Sometimes I'd go to the Isle of Wight, stay overnight, expenses paid, in a hotel, fuel card, so I didn't have to pay for the fuel. That was the perks of it. But as I say, not a type of job I really enjoyed doing, because of the way it treats people. So I'm still living in Streatham with John and Luke. We've gone away a few times on holiday together. He'd come up to Blackpool with me. He'd met my ex-wife and my daughter. We'd been to Barnsley. He'd met my mother and father. And during the summer holidays, we picked up my daughter and we went to France. And so he'd met my parents, and suggested we meet his parents. So we took 2 weeks away with my daughter. I think she was 7 or maybe 8, 7 or 8, I think she was. And we went to the ferry, went over on the ferry. Daughter was seasick, unfortunately. Got to Calais, and we drove up to Paris. We went to a place called Asterix World. I can't remember where exactly it was, but apparently Asterix was really big in France. We didn't go to Disneyland. And then we drove through France down to Nimes, where his parents lived. We met his parents, we stayed over there a few days. We met his brother. One of his brothers was a gendarme in the police. And we went right down to the south of France, continued on, and went down to Monte Carlo. So we spent a couple of days in Monte Carlo. Now this was a great experience for me, and when I've spoken to my daughter about it, it was a good experience for her. The sad thing which happened during this trip was that before we'd set off, we'd been to see my parents. My father was ill. He'd lost a lot of weight. He did look really ill. And unfortunately, while we were in France, he passed away. And I'm really glad that I got to see him beforehand. I'm glad we made that journey there before we set off to France. So we came back from France. I dropped my daughter off, and I'd had enough of being a bailiff. So I started looking for another job. And I got a job working for Lambeth Council as a caretaker, concierge. This was another new departure for me. I'd done maintenance and things before, so it wasn't that big a jump. And where I worked was a concierge entrance, and there was 3 blocks of high-rise flats. And the pay was good because it was a council job. The hours were quite long, 10-hour shifts, day shift, and then like not so much a night shift because we used to finish about 12 at night, but it was a split day. So one week I worked between 6 in the morning, and following week I'd probably start about 2 o'clock or something like that. I enjoyed it. You know, the residents were really nice. I remember over the Christmas period I got invited for about 4 or 5 different Christmas dinners. So, yeah, that was good. It was good, but it wasn't pushing me at all, really. It was a simple enough job to do. So I spoke to the people in the housing office who used to deal with all the repairs and setting up leases and things like that, and asked if there was a possibility of maybe becoming an office temp or working in the office doing something. And luckily I got a job in the office. So we would be working on reception in the office, dealing with residents who came in with issues of repairs and things. Or I'd be sat on the phones answering the calls, again with the repairs. A bit more money this time. Office work. I'm thinking, maybe I can eventually get to the city if I'm doing office work now. I think it's probably about 6 months in to this job when I applied for a housing officer post. It just seemed like a normal progression from working with doing repairs and dealing with the rents. And I was lucky enough to get a job as a housing officer. So I'll be taking prospective tenants out, do viewings in flats, set up the tenancies. I also had to deal with evictions as well. People who hadn't paid their rents. Sometimes I'd end up going to court. Again, not a very nice bit, but it was an experience. Now, in this period, a lot of councils and a lot of businesses really were coming up with the idea that if we have a call centre, a centralised call centre, we can deal with everybody's queries by phone. So I think Lambeth Council had about 20 housing officers dotted around Lambeth, and the idea was to consolidate it all into a call centre. So this was going to be a fairly, couple £1 million project to set up a call centre. And they were looking for people to work on the project. And luckily, I got a job working on the project. It was going to be, I mean, I didn't really know a great deal about call centres. But you quickly learn things. I'm quite, I thought I was quite smart. I still think I'm quite smart, and it enabled me to work on this project. Took about 12 months, and eventually we got the call centre up and running. And I sort of, rather than going back to being a housing officer, I sort of fell into a job in the call centre. So I became a systems analyst and a reporting analyst for the call centre. So my computer skills grew quite quickly during the project, and because I was right at the beginning, right, when everything was starting, I understood all the different software which were going to be used, and I helped tailor it to Lambeth's needs. So I became a bit indispensable, really. So I sort of made my own job and got more money for it as well. That was really good. About this time, I'd sort of rediscovered a love of cycling. And one of the main reasons is that when I was living in Streatham and working in Lambeth, buses, no tubes, only trains, it was actually easy to cycle to work. And luckily Lambeth did a cycle to work scheme, and they give you up to like £1,000 up towards to get a bike, and then you get the bike and you pay it back out of your wages. So I had a bike. I was also quite active besides that. When I wasn't working, I was regular at the gym, probably about 3-4 times a week in the gym, and a lot of swimming. I cycled to the swimming baths on the way to work in the morning, 7 o'clock, go for a swim, then go to work. Sometimes I went swimming in the morning, went to work, came home and went swimming in the evening. So yeah, I was quite active. And it was one of these times when I was in the swimming pool after work that I met Simon. Now, and he was a scuba diving instructor. And what they'd done in Streatham swimming pool, they'd set up taster sessions for scuba diving. And I got chatting to Simon, as I say, when I was swimming, and he said, "Why don't you come along, give it a go, see what it's like?" So I did. The following week, turned up for the taster session, and within 5 minutes I was under the water breathing through scuba gear. It's such a calming, fantastic feeling. I mean, I'd swum underwater with the snorkels previously and things like that, but this was actually under the water. It was a revelation. It was. So I was hooked after the first session. And Simon and the club which he run was all volunteers. Simon was the only paid person because it was his club, and all the other helpers were volunteers. And it was a paddy courses which they did, and I think over 6 months I must have gone through all the different courses. I went and did my open water dive in Stony Cove, which is a diving place in Stony, actually. It's an old quarry which has been flooded, and it has things under the water. A Thistledome was a boat which did sunk, a helicopter, things like that. And I did my open water dive there in a full dry suit because it was cold. I think I probably did it in November, something like that. But I passed it, qualified it, and that was me. I'm ready for the next challenge. So I quickly went through the training courses, became a dive master, and eventually I became an assistant instructor in scuba diving. Now the club used to do regular trips abroad, and the following year we took some new trainees for their open water, and we went to Sharm el Sheikh in Egypt. Now, I mean, that was the first time I've been to Egypt. Probably a lot. I think Sharm el Sheikh is probably a lot more built up now than it was when I first went. There wasn't that much there in hotels and things, but we were only going for the diving really anyway. So yeah, so probably twice, 3 times a year they'd take divers over to Egypt. And it was such a fulfilling experience teaching people getting them over their nervousness, training them how to breathe underwater. It was so fulfilling. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. I think I was a good teacher. Quite a lot of the pupils that said that to me. Calming influence, and explained really well what needed to be done. So yeah, good times, good times. Again, something normally happens to me when things are really good, and I suffered a collapsed lung, which wasn't possibly related to the scuba diving, but I was in the hospital for a week with a collapsed lung. Stick a tube in, inflate the lung, hopefully it'll get better and seal itself up. I was told by the doctor that surprisingly a lot of people have collapsed lungs, but which actually self-reinflate and self-heal sort of thing. The downside of this is really scuba diving's not ideal if you've had a collapsed lung. And so, yeah, it was a time to give it up, unfortunately. And on top of that, after being living in the same flat with John Luke for like 10 years, through the house and the flat, he'd had enough of London and he wanted to move back to France. His parents were getting older and he wanted to be nearer to those. And asked me if I wanted to go with him. Now, I had quite a lot of hobbies separate to what he did, the scuba diving, the cycling and things like that. And also, my work career was on a upward move, if you like. I was hoping to get another promotion at work, and I agonised for quite a while. I actually went back to France with him and we looked at some properties, maybe to do up, you know, like a Jeet, something like that. I had some great ideas, but I was apprehensive of leaving a really good job with, you know, like I say, things I could do in the workplace. I could get bigger, you know, move further up, earn more money. So yeah, I decided I'm not going to move to France. So after 10 years, as I say, I'm saying bye-bye to John Luke. And I had to look for a new flat myself. So I've moved into, John Luke moved after he'd sold the flat. And he kindly gave me a bit of the profit, which enabled me to find a decent flat in Norbury, which was even a bit further out from Streatham. But it was like £1,000 a month, 1-bedroom flat. That's London charge, you know, prices for London, unfortunately. And so yeah, I'm back on my own, but this time I've got a good job, lots of friends. Scuba diving, unfortunately I couldn't go off and do the open water stuff, but I could still teach in the swimming pool because it was shallow. So life was okay, but as I say, I was back on my own. And I think that's where I'm going to stop this one. Yeah, I'm going to stop. This is like 10 years of London. So this is part 1. And part 2 will cover the next 10 years up to 52. So hopefully it's been interesting. Waffling again. It's off the cuff. It's not edited. Yeah, so if you like, give us a thumbs up, subscribe. Love to hear any comments, and I'll see you next time. Bye.